I feel like with, Obergefell, which is the Supreme Court case that legalized same-sex marriage in 2015,
Yeah.
people still seem to have a disconnect between what they saw there and their understanding of the larger LGBTQ rights movement. I think with that decision, a lot of people, most Americans thought, oh, so the movement for equality is over.
Yeah.
That's it.
Good. Yeah.
And marriage was a very important, but a small piece of the movement. For example, right now, in 29 states, LGBTQ people can still be fired for being LGBTQ. They can be denied credit, housing, and public accommodations. So there are all these legal and cultural barriers that LGBTQ people still face, and it's a much larger problem than we perceive it in society.
Today I have the great honor of speaking with Charlotte Clymer. I'm going to tell us your role with HRC.
I am the press secretary for Rapid Response.
Great. And so, she's smarter than me.
Oh, stop. Not true.
But it's really great how we got to be here today. So I follow Charlotte on Twitter. Charlotte served in the military, in the U.S. military. She was in combat, right? In the military?
No, I was not. I never deployed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And she works with HRC. She is a huge trans advocate. Our own child is trans, so it has been kind of like what would I call it? Like an organic growth for me, because as an ally, we learn as we go. Mm-hmm. And then what I've discovered with our own child is there's this sense of agency that I'd never seen in like a young person before. So Charlotte has always been somebody who has stood out to me as being a really strong voice with lots of really amazing opinions. So if you don't follow her on Twitter, you need to follow her on Twitter, because she did this huge, wonderful, I think, vocal campaign and monetary campaign for Elizabeth Warren when she was running. And I voted for Elizabeth in the primary, and God, and just still watching the whole thing.
It's tough. It's really tough. Yeah, I feel like she would have been perfect in this particular moment.
She would. I mean, that's the craziest thing as we look at, and then was it? Oh, you had retweeted Stephen Colbert's thing the other day, where it was like, the things going against her. She was articulate, and she didn't have a penis. So
yeah, which is true.
It is, and it's like what I think women what we're up against, and it's a funny thing to be in that situation and watch it go down in 2020 still, where it's one of those things.
Still,
this is a thing.
It's still happening.
So how did you find your way to HRC?
Well, that's an interesting story. So I was medically retired from the Army in 2012.
Okay.
And I thought, well, this sucks, because I wanted to make the military a career. I was really engaged in it. And when I got medically retired, I thought, well, how else can I serve my country? Like, what else can I do to be of service to others? Because that's really what I wanted. Yeah. I wanted to make some kind of impression or make a mark. And so I started writing. I started this blog online and just doing these blogs, and one of them, got a lot of attention, and my friend was like, well, you should send it into, a website somewhere to see if someone might publish it. So I sent it to HuffPost, and they published it, and it went viral. And it's kind of
what was the story?
So it was an op-ed. It was about why we have a double standard encouraging young women to look up to men. With children, we encourage, like, if girls can either look up to men or women. Like, we don't give a shit.
Right.
Like, if a little girl says Barack Obama's my hero, it's fine. If she says Hillary Clinton is my hero, it's fine. With boys, we only encourage them to look up to men.
Gotcha.
If a boy says that he looks up to a woman, or as a woman as his personal hero or role model, we tend to get really uncomfortable over that.
That is, I mean, really, that's very interesting to me. Because you're young, you're in your 30s, right?
30, yeah, 33.
Yeah. So you're still like young and in the thick of like that. It's almost like this delayed post-adolescence and you know, like, and growing up in a world that's supposed to be, I mean, I'm 47, it's supposed to be way more progressive than it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to your talk that you gave at the Taft School and just talking about this administration and how, you know, we're so wildly behind where we were going. I feel like we were going somewhere during the Obama administration. I mean, I hope I'm not wrong. But, you know, the legislation that they're pulling, you know, I think every week I have a group of parents, bless you, that are, you know, parents of trans kids, and every week it's like, in this state, this is, you know, here's something that's going against trans people. You know, they're not going to get medically treated. They're not going to, you know, they can be kicked out of homeless shelters. Like all, you know, everything like comes up. You see it all the time. You're like, okay, you know, got to take care of it. So it's interesting to hear that, because to me, that makes like, it should have been something that we talked about in the 70s. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it should have, when I was a kid, it should have been the thing where it was already changing. Because I feel like that was, and I like, go ahead.
You know, it's strange because I feel like with, you know, Obergefell, which is the Supreme Court case that legalized same-sex marriage in 2015,
Yeah.
People still seem to have a disconnect between what they saw there and their understanding of the larger LGBTQ rights movement. I think with that decision, a lot of people, most Americans thought, oh, so the movement for equality is over.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And marriage was a very important but a small piece of the movement. You know, for example, right now, in 29 states, LGBTQ people can still be fired for being LGBTQ. They can be denied credit, housing, and, you know, public accommodations. So there are all these legal and cultural barriers that LGBTQ people still face, and it's a much larger problem than, you know, we perceive it in society.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think there is that like exhalation, you know, because people had thought they had done well, kind of thing,
Right.
and they had,
Of course.
you know, but I don't think, and maybe it's because more trans people were I mean, maybe it's because of the internet and more trans people were talking on the internet, you know, and that's exposure, or, you know what I'm saying? So like that happened in 2015. I mean, what is it? That was about, she was born in 10, and we had switched pronouns by the time she was, I think, 4, you know, the minute she could talk, she was like, y'all made a mistake.
Right.
Tell us about it, you know? And she was like, no, you made a mistake. I'm a girl. And we're like, okay, you know? So, and it was very interesting, kind of that time seems like then also too, the way people use the internet more. So you could, you know, people were doing more video, more pictures, I think tweeting more, those kind of things, or talking about it more, maybe blogging or whatever it was. And that's why I do like that in that thing that at Taft you also said, this is not a trend. Like trans people have been around forever. And I don't think people get that, you know?
No. And it's not surprising, you know, when I was in the closet as a kid, like I wasn't exposed to trans people. I didn't know in general about what it means to be transgender or you know, gender identity as a concept. I had no idea. I just knew that there was something in me that was incongruent. Right. I didn't know how to explain it, and it was tortuous to think about it.
So how would you, because as an adult you would call it incongruent, but when you were a kid, what did you call it?
I didn't know what to call it.
Yeah.
I thought, you know, and my only frame of reference for it was sexual orientation, honestly. Like that was all I could do. I mean, for the longest time I thought, because you know, the only way I could explain it was, what is the alternative to who I'm supposed to be or who people expect me to be. And all I could think about was sexuality. And so I thought, well, if I want to, yeah. So if I want to be a girl, maybe this means I'm into men somehow, even though I'm not attracted to men. So I'm kind of waiting for those feelings to kick in. I knew gay, right? I knew gay and bisexual. Like those were concepts I understood. And so I thought maybe this is something that happens in puberty. Maybe the reason I want to wear a dress and I want a vagina and I want breasts is because I will develop those feelings. And that never happened. I never became attracted to men.
Right.
And it really bothered me because I saw
that would have made it easier.
Right. It would happen in a certain way. Not
societal, right?
What's that?
Like in a societal way, if you were like trying to like.
I think it would have given me cover to express myself because people can understand. There's still barriers. There's still stigma. So let's get that out of the way. Like there's still vast, vicious homophobia, of course, absolutely. But that being said, in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was far more acceptable, by far more acceptable to be openly gay than being openly transgender, and it still is, for that matter.
Oh,
right?
Believe me.
Right. So
she's got a target on her back.
Oh yeah, I bet.
She doesn't know.
And so I think if I were openly gay, it would have given me the chance to be flamboyant in a way that was understandable to people.
Right.
And it's hard to explain that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hear you because I could see exactly. I think it might be harder to explain to the vast population, right?
Yeah.
Like it would be. Did you see that movie? It's like, Do I Speak Gay or something, and it talks about.
Oh yeah.
Like that. I think was really trying to express that as well.
And it's a problematic concept because there are a lot of gay men and lesbians who do not reflect the characteristics that we associate with gay and lesbian people and bisexual people, for that matter.
Yep.
There are gay men who are, who you cannot pick out of a crowd of hypermasculine men.
No, it's 100% right.
There are lesbians and other queer women who you cannot pick out of a crowd of super feminine traditional women, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, even the concept of that is problematic. But when, for I think a lot of folks my age especially, and older, in the closet, it was really hard for us to express ourselves in a way that was healthy.
And like, to me, somebody in your guys' age group, like being in the closet seems nuts to me. You know what I mean? But I grew up like not in a religious community, not in a conservative religious community. And I think my parents were always allies. And, so I think it was this exposure that I had, but I find it, it hurts my heart to hear that even at, 30, I have a friend and we've met once, but then we talk online. She's a friend of a friend and she didn't transition until she was 28. You guys should meet actually. Mika Tosca. She is a climate scientist in Chicago at Loyola, I think, and she's a badass. I love her. So she's putting out some really cool content because she'll come and speak at real estate conferences about like, yes, shit is hitting the fan. And, because we kind of talk about like what the future looks like for our clients and stuff. But I'll introduce you guys because I love her. She's really cool, really smart. But she was saying, she called having to go through adolescence like being poisoned by testosterone.
Yeah.
And I just find that I guess I just find it not sad. I'm disappointed that you didn't get to come out earlier. What I mean?
It's a loss. It's a sense of loss. And, that's something that a lot of older trans folks go through is just because, when I came out, it was really exciting and I'm getting emotional talking about it. It was very exciting to come out. At the same time, being out for a year, 2 years, 3 years, you realize, wow, it could have been this way all this time. look at how much I missed.
Yeah.
So I think I did the calculating um, last December, and I forget exactly what it was, but I won't be 57 until I've been out of the closet for as long as I was in the closet in my life.
Wow. It's
Or
true.
no, or more than that, actually. I think 58 or 59. I mean, so a long time.
Well, I promise you, it's a long time between now and then, so you don't even remember much of your childhood. Just gets it blurry after a while. But
That's great for that's great for your kiddo because she was born into a very loving, affirming family,
yeah,
and
I mean, her dad, I will tell you, he's a 610-pound, 6'3" ex-college football player, and he never batted an eyelash, and that was really fabulous. I mean, I think I said to him, was like, now I know why we were supposed to meet, and I don't like, we're not married, and I was married before. I hated being married. It felt very conformist to me. So I just told him, when we met and I knew that we were going to be partners, I was just like, please promise me you'll never marry me or ask me to marry you. And he was like, oh God, like, heaven forbid you have, it was like, no, seriously. But I said to him, I was just like, we just had a very crazy experience with a family at her school. And I just looked at him and I was like, it's just so clear to me why we were supposed to meet. Because when we partner together on projects or, you know what I mean, or anything like that, we can get shit done. And I think we also like calm each other down. So like when she came out to us, when she was just like, she just knew who she was, Charlotte. She just said it. I mean, when I had her, I was like, this is the most willful little being I've ever met. I mean, she just wanted to like sit on the couch and nurse all day long. Like that was it. I want to eat and sleep, and you will not get up. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to kill me because I'm a really social being. And, like she's just this anchor of like, Argh. And it was, I mean, there was just no choice. She was just like, you guys made a mistake. I'm a girl. I remember her like coming out of the back room. She was like maybe like 3.5 and she's all naked and she came out of the back room. She's like kind of did this crab walk and she goes, hey mom, I'm just a girl with a penis. Who cares? And I was like, all right, very good. It's like, oh my God.
Wow. Self-aware, very self-aware.
Yeah, it's super self-aware. And I think Sty and I were just lucky that we were raised to be, I don't know if you call it open, but just like let people be who they are. And then, and then we have to catch up because I will tell you this is my naivety, right? And like my privilege and all this shit is that because she was trans, I was like, oh, well, we're part of the LGBTQ community. I didn't know what an ally was yet, right? So Mika,
yeah,
I'll tell you. No. Now I know my place. So it was great. It was great, actually. I got ripped a new one. So it was after the Women's March, and Mika posted something online about how, exclusionary it felt. Like she was like, I'm there, and it was a bunch of white women, and they're, kind of thing. And she was really pissed about it. And I kind of said something like, whoa. We ended up having a whole conversation that day, which I learned so much in that, where I was in tears, but she was like, you are not, you're an ally. This is kind of, I think I have the conversation somewhere still because it's a good reminder, but it was really generous and thoughtful of her to take all that fucking time to explain it to me. And I'm kind of lucky that she was pissed enough because I think it made me a better ally, an actual ally without being so pretentious,
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated. I do think that the parents of trans kids are in a special category. And I think there's room to discuss this. There's room for disagreement. I personally feel that parents of trans kids are in a special category. And I'm not, you're not LGBTQ, your husband isn't LGBTQ, I get that. But I do think it would have to at least be described as LGBTQ adjacent.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I would
Because
just
you are on the very front lines right now of
yeah.
what we're doing. And
well, we are, but you're the pioneers. You guys are the pioneers.
Well,
your age group?
Sure. I mean, sure. I mean, well, yeah. I mean, there are other pioneers too. Like, there are people who came before us. I think that we are in a very odd, distinct chapter. I think that's the way to put it. Yeah. Like Caitlyn Jenner was the supposed tipping point. Like that. Like and not just Caitlyn Jenner, but Laverne Cox and Janet Mock, and so there was like a year, 18-month period where there was a lot of visibility, which is great. But way before that, you got Marsha P. Johnson and Stonewall and Sylvia Rivera. You have all these folks along the way, Miss Major, just trans people who were pioneers in various ways. And we see our generation now with Raquel Willis and Danica Rome and Sarah McBride and a bunch of other folks. So
there's all these women in government now. These trans women in
government. Yeah, that's great.
It's amazing. Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, like, that's what keeps me optimistic about each voting cycle, is that, oh my gosh, we are still like voting like away from this particular GOP. Like there is that, unless we just get tampered with again. I do have a friend who wanted me to ask you a question.
Oh, sure.
Hang on here. And she said her big question is twofold. You're a big Elizabeth Warren supporter, as I am. Her name is Heather Dwight. She lives here in Boulder. She owns a company called Kaluna Events, that they do like crazy weddings all over the country, which is really cool. She said, is it safe to assume you're now supporting Joe Biden? In the last debate, Biden said that he was picking a woman VP. Do you hope it's Warren, or do you think it's more important for him to choose a woman of color like Harris or Adams? She says, I'm a bit torn and would love all three for a variety of reasons, but I at least hope he involves all three in his administration. And then tell her I love her. I'm a big fan.
Thank you, Heather. I appreciate the question. Very kind of you to say that. I mean, yeah, I'm definitely supporting Joe Biden. I think by default now, I think everyone is going to be supporting Joe Biden once Sanders drops out. I do. No, I do. I know that there's a lot of anxiety and uncertainty about whether or not, but I really do trust that Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden will come together and unify the party. I do. And the reason I believe that is because I have to believe that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I get that.
Like we really don't get to do anything other than that at this point.
I know. I'm also prepping myself for the worst and just being like, God, I think we could flip the Senate.
Oh, we could. Oh, yes, we absolutely could. 4 months ago, I would have not been so confident in that. But right now, I am moderately confident in that we're going to flip the Senate. Yes.
I think McConnell won't go unless Amy McGrath just doesn't get support because she's a woman.
So I think McConnell's probably going to win, honestly. I'm still going to, I do. Yeah, I'm going to fight tooth and nail for Amy McGrath and we'll make sure. But there are several seats where things are looking really good, like really, really good. Colorado.
Oh, I can't wait to get rid of him.
Oh, yeah. That'd be great.
Right. But did you see that Hick just gave up he already said, you know what, you take my delegates. For the caucuses, because he's doing so well, Hickenlooper.
Yeah.
I was like, that was actually really cool.
Yeah.
We need shit like that to go down, so there's less ego involved and more like let's just get it done.
Totally agree. Yeah, but I'm confident. Colorado, Arizona, Maine, Montana,
Florida, maybe.
Florida. I don't know. Florida's looking a little iffy.
That guy is what's his name, Scott?
Yeah, Rick Scott. Yeah, he's not very nice. Hopefully though we get him out. But no, I am moderately confident we're going to take back the Senate.
Okay.
So that's good. Yeah, wouldn't that be great?
Deep anxiety, but I do like, I always kind of go through these waves of it and then come back to like, okay, all right, we have proven ourselves each election cycle since 2016 that this wasn't a good fit.
That's right.
So hopefully that'll be the case. All right, so sorry, and I digressed on the question, it just came through. Okay. But let's go back to that then. So, you know, I will say this, and why I call your guys is like your generation, you know, who I would say the millennials, who are the folks who are now out more and stuff, pioneers, because I think you're doing it in a more, it's more of an out way. I know that Janet Mock, you know, and everybody that has been doing this, like had transitioned and was, you know, trying to have a voice. All of a sudden, I think maybe Laverne Cox got everything out there more on a socially acceptable level because she was on a TV show. I don't know what, but that seems to me when it was like as our daughter was, we were transitioning her pronouns. I think it was kind of this thing of like, people were like, oh, this is in conversation. And then I see younger people really being fluid. And, you know, I mean, I don't know if you've ever watched those, the decade things on Netflix. You know what I'm talking about? They're like decade.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm from the 80s, and I remember when the AIDS virus was like coming out. Nobody knew what it was, right? It was just hitting the gay population. And they show some of those news clips, and people are terrified. You should go back and watch them if you haven't seen them, because it really is. It was a crazy time. It's kind of like right now with coronavirus, you know, the same thing. But I think that, you know, I'm optimistic for non-binary people right now and trans people because in 10 years time, for your generation, your incomes are going to be higher. You're going to be having, you know, a whole decade behind you of being out and being outspoken. And I don't know, I think you guys are going to change the planet. You know, I mean, I think your generation is going to change the planet. Okay, wait. Here's a question from Marty Moore. She's our director of Out Boulder here in Boulder. We love her. She's freaking phenomenal. So she says, since many trans people do not have regular doctors nor seek medical help because of transphobic and non-inclusive systems, what do you think the impact of this virus might be in the trans community? With most of the LGBTQ centers closed in the nation, how do you suggest leaders address the loneliness issues of the LGBT community?
So I forget the exact statistic, but I think something like 70% of trans people have experienced some form of discrimination when visiting a medical provider. You know, just for a routine checkup, it's really terrifying sometimes. You know, I've had pretty good experiences with the doctor. I think only one negative interaction I've had in a medical setting, but overall I've been pretty okay. Most trans folks, though, it is a regular thing. If you go to the doctor, you'll be misgendered. You might have medical personnel who intentionally will not use your proper pronouns, or will ask very invasive questions like, you know, why is it that you have a female name or in a penis, or a male name and a vagina, something to that effect. And so what the worry here is that with this virus being so deadly in certain cases, and with the need to have a safe environment to begin with, you know, LGBTQ people are going to avoid going to the doctor to get treatment and end up, you know, being kind of left out in the cold, especially when we hit the point where, you know, the medical equipment and access to doctors is stretched way too thin in a couple weeks. You know, it's going to be, the system is going to be overloaded, and LGBTQ people are going to be, you know, kind of out in the cold if they feel afraid to seek care.
Yeah, I know. I read that New York has said something like in 45 days, the hospitals are going to be inundated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if there's a solution. I mean, I feel like if, you know, what Marty is saying too, you know, there a lot of people feeling like they're isolated, you know, is scary to me. Like as a parent, I would foster all of the kids. I would take them all in if I could. And that does, you know, that is where also I see that she's really lucky with us, you know, is that we would probably, we'll bend over backward. We're lucky here in Colorado. We have at Children's, we have a center called the True Center. And so I hope that I'll have to talk to Marty and see, but that we can figure something out to get kids there. And that's maybe what, right now, what Boulder is doing is, you know, we're lucky, we're a small town, we're like 100,000 people, but there's a lot of wealthy people. And so a lot of people are working on creating funds so that people who are in need can get help. Because we also, like at her school, there's a huge population of kids. She's at a public school, and 2 meals a day, they get their meals there, and that's it. And so, so trying to figure out like how we can help everybody right now, and nobody knows what's going to happen.
No, it's very much up in the air. We have a sense of what's going to happen, but we're not really sure how it's going to be addressed. You know, I think the best metaphor I've seen for it is a tsunami. Mm-hmm. You know, we are in the moment where right now where we're seeing the water edge recede into the ocean. Mm-hmm. And the wave is coming in 2 weeks. That's going to be the moment where we all are.
And I wonder, I mean, the anxiety levels are going to be high. Let me see. Hey, Doo-Doo. Hi, Mom. You want to come say hi to Charlotte? Okay. Oh, there she is. Hi. Here, come sit down.
Hi.
Hi. How you doing?
Not much.
You're not doing much? So, you know, Charlotte is... she's a transgender woman.
Yes, I know.
Okay, all right. I'm not gonna, you know, I know. This is where I'm the dumb mom. Do you have any questions you want to ask her?
No.
Are you sure? Okay, well, we're just gonna talk. If you want to hang out, and if you have a question, you can ask. Okay?
I actually have to go on the trampoline with Dad right now.
You have jumping to do?
Yes.
Oh, well.
Fair.
I'm glad you came to say hi. And you can come back.
Your hair looks great.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, thank you. Mom, I wish they came because I'm jumping on the trampoline.
She might be terrified if she jumps on the trampoline.
No, not on jump on it.
Oh.
Just like hang out on it.
She could. It's enclosed.
I know. But would you be okay with that?
Yes, but I will tell you, I tortured a kitten and she ran away when I was little, so you might want to just think about whether or not you do that.
I'm going to tell Dad that it's okay with you also.
This is a triangulation going on right now.
Yeah, it looks like it.
He already said no, right?
Wait, but am I allowed to go out on the trampoline?
What did your father say?
I didn't ask him that.
You didn't?
But would I be allowed to?
Did you ask Daddy already?
No.
Are you sure?
100%.
Okay. I'm okay with it, but you can't jump with her on the trampoline.
I won't.
She'll run away.
Aw.
You know, nugget. But make sure you told Dad that you asked me and I said it's okay as long as you don't jump, baby. All right.
You kid.
Oh my God, you're the parent. I just did one thing right. Oh my gosh. So yeah, so what are you like when, so yeah, I think that your generation is really, really paving the way for hers.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, we're building on the progress that's been made by the trans people who came before us.
Yeah.
We really are in the thick. See, the interesting thing here is like with the increased visibility has become increased criticism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think 10 years ago, most Americans weren't even aware of the word transgender.
100%.
Right. And so for some folks, it's interesting because it wasn't on people's radars to care about.
I would say 15 years ago, because she's
15 years ago.
10. Yeah, she's turning 10, and well, it might have just started about 10 years ago, because when she was an infant, it was one thing, and there were some conversations of it, but by the time she was transitioning, I was definitely hearing about it more. So maybe 15.
So 15 years ago, sure. 15 years ago, I think most Americans didn't even know the word transgender.
Yeah.
It just wasn't on people's radars to care about. Right. Republican lawmakers didn't give a shit. Like, no one was going to introduce an anti-trans bill because it wouldn't, who cares?
Why? It's not a talking point.
Right. And so, ironically, the paradox is, I think for a lot of trans people back then, it was easier to get around in some ways because they were looked at as an oddity. Of course, there was stigma, but it wasn't something that people, were consciously aware of in such a way that they're like, oh, you're a threat to society.
Right.
And these days, it's different in that way because now we have this increased visibility, which is great. We have lawmakers who care about us and want to see our rights enshrined in the law.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's increased hostility to that.
Yeah.
Is why we see all of these, Republican lawmakers now trying to roll back trans rights.
I often wonder who these people are, like Stephen Miller, like how their minds think all the time, that come up with these talking points that are so poisonous and so toxic to human lives. It seems to me like they're a sociopath. If you're gonna sit there and create
yeah, you could be right.
Around and goes, oh, I really want to fuck with somebody so badly. Like, who does that? Right.
It's infuriating. It is really infuriating.
And when did those become talking points? Like, when was that? It's crazy to me. So what do you want to see? What's your ideal future for you, for trans women? I would say trans women of color, trans men. Like, what do you want the next 10 years to look like?
I think for LGBTQ people, but trans people specifically, it would be great to see the Equality Act get passed.
Yeah.
So that federal non-discrimination protections are enshrined in a law. So that if I start driving from San Francisco to New York, I will have the same rights no matter what city, county, state I'm in at a time.
21 states?
It would be great. So there's 29 states. There are no protections or very little protections for LGBTQ people against discrimination. 29 states. Yep. So I would like to see that happen. I would like to see an investment made in employment for trans people, because there are trans and non-binary people face increased levels of homelessness, unemployment, sexual assault, of course, that sometimes stems from those conditions, and that's because there's a stigma attached to trans and non-binary people, and a lot of employers don't want to hire us. I know.
It makes me
so angry.
God. Ugh, I hate it. I know, and it's one of those. Yeah, I agree. I want, like, it was so funny. We had to deal with CPS because of this family at our school, and one of the questions from the guy, when they're interviewing us separately, was, "Well, what do you want to see for your kid?" And I was like, "Well, because I get so pissed. Like, I want her to not have a 51% suicide attempt rate. That's number one comes to mind.
Pretty big.
And then, like, I don't want her to get beat up and killed in an alley. I want to make sure that if I want to send her to boarding school because she wants to go, that she's not going to get killed in the backwoods. And he finally goes, "So I'm just going to write happy life." I'm like, sure. That's what you want to call it.
There you go.
Fine.
There you go.
But you start looking at that, and it is as a parent, of a transgender girl, I have to tell you, like, you know, like it makes me want to like run out there and hug you. Like the position that you were putting yourself in as a trans woman is really powerful for other people. I'll tell you that. And it scares me for you too, in that world, you know, and it's like, I think that's just probably the parent in me. But, you know, there has to be, I think there is. I think there's this wave of a different perception that's happening. I have to believe that anyway. Like walk through the day like that and be like, you know, because what we experienced here was, I cannot imagine what it's going to be like for her when she's in middle school, excuse me.
Sure.
And, you know, it's a crush on somebody. And how are the parents going to, you know, deal with that? I think we'll find out really quickly how open our friends are. You know?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think it's interesting to look at just the disparity of privilege in the trans community.
Yes.
Which is something that people don't talk about enough. You know, so you look at me, right? I am, you know, I don't have a 6-figure job income.
Right.
I, you know, don't necessarily have the greatest health care.
Right.
I don't have family.
None but yes.
Right. So, right. But I have all these things that are considerable barriers, right?
Yeah.
And yet you would consider me one of the more privileged people in the trans community.
Yeah. You have, you know, and I'll tell you why, because you have a voice and people are listening to you. And yes, and I worry about, you know what I worry about. I saw this woman one day, she must have been about 18. We're in the city, we're in New York City, and you could tell she had been up all night, out, you know, like had probably like was homeless. She was trans, she was Black, and she was dehydrated. And I just wanted to like grab her and hug her. You know, it was just like, these are the kids that I'm super, super worried about, because they're the ones, you know, who end up murdered all the time.
Right. That's exactly right. And, you know, for those of us who are trans, and I mean, you know, I'm doing okay. Like I'm doing okay, but even with the privileges I hold, if I were to move into the broader community, like if you consider me in the broader age group, like like all millennials, regardless of background, you know, I'm definitely not one of the more privileged people.
Right.
And in the trans community, I am more privileged, which goes to show you that the vast majority of trans people do have far greater obstacles, you know, especially trans women of color, especially non-binary people of color. They encounter horrific levels of discrimination that people don't talk about enough.
I know. That it gives me deep anxiety. I don't know how you have a, like, I don't know how as a white woman, I actually have a place to have that conversation other than just being supportive of those people who are having that conversation. Yeah. You know, I'm really become, like I have in this last, I mean, that is, you know, the silver lining of the Trump administration is that we are all seeing how racist this country is and how, you know, like people are showing themselves. And I do think that there is value in it, because I think that white people thought things were okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think for the first year that after he, you know, was inaugurated, we'd say like, this isn't the America we know.
Right.
And, you know, people of color are going, are you kidding me?
My best friends is Black, and we were talking, and I was like, I just don't remember it being this racist when we were growing up. And he goes, he's a Black man, and he looks at me, he goes, I do. And I was like, right, because I'm not a Black man.
Right.
You know, I was like, that was so generous of him, because he should have just told me to fuck off. You know, but it is one of those things where I'm glad that I'm finally fucking figuring all this shit out. You know?
It's tough. It's really tough, but I think, being humble and open to learning and being willing to make mistakes is key.
Yeah.
Coming out as trans was probably the best education and allyship I've ever got, because in the closet,
Like,
it's very different. In the closet, as I was presenting as a white straight man in the
right.
closet.
In the military.
In the military, you have a lot of privilege.
Yeah.
Coming out was just a different world. Like, I was elated. I was really happy, and I was, the dysphoria was eased up, which was great.
That's amazing.
But I started noticing things. Like, I started noticing that people would feel very entitled to my time. And
I was talking about with Mika, where she was very generous with me that day.
Right, entitled to my body, entitled to, like, I'd be at a party and a stranger would strike up a conversation with me and be like, "Hey, so just curious, like, have you gotten bottom surgery yet?" Or,
"What?
"Oh yeah, this happens more frequently than you think." And I had thought, but all of this made me think of all the times that I would ask a friend of color a question about racism that I easily could have Googled.
Yeah.
Or that I could have done the labor myself, but I expected them to do the labor for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't think about it. It's not something you consider until you're put in that position where you're having to take on the labor for an oppression that you're experiencing. And I think that was an interesting education and allyship. And then just realizing that, being a good ally means taking on the labor yourself instead of expecting, the folks in that community to do it for you.
Yeah, and I think that's that was a lesson that I learned the hard way. But I think maybe because of my job, I've always had to be a good listener, and so I will forever be grateful for Mika for taking that time with me, because I was thoroughly confused and thoroughly white girling at that time, and it was like she was really. I mean, we were probably talking on Facebook for like 3 hours.
Wow.
Uh-huh. I owe her the world for that, because she was just like, "You're not getting it." And I wasn't. And then I just sat there and I was like, okay. And I've done enough like personal work to like get through this stuff where you want to like fight back against the person who's saying the thing, and just be like, be wrong, be wrong, be wrong, sobbing. But also knowing that I had somebody that I had to get this right for.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's what made it the easier, 3 hours I can't give back to her, but it made it so that I could easily get, bless you, like done in that time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and paying it forward by engaging with other white people, which is not easy. Having those hard conversations with white friends and white family members, and kind of calling them in and educating them so that people of color don't have to do that kind of labor. And that goes for every group, whether it's able-bodied people, cis people, male identifying people. There are trans men I know who will do that labor of educating other men about sexism and misogyny, because they feel it's part of their job to act as an ally in that way to women.
Wow.
I mean, this is something that is a very simple concept if you're humble enough to embrace it.
Yeah.
But getting to that place of humility can be tough.
You watch people struggle with it all the time, right?
Yep. Yeah, but I struggle with it. I definitely have, made mistakes in the past, and having really great people in my life who took me aside and been like, this, gotta work on these things. No one's perfect. No one. Everyone makes mistakes. Any activists, in history who you can think of, they've made mistakes.
Yeah.
They've made mistakes, and they've had to negotiate those and process through them and become better people.
Yeah, and we glorify, that why we don't think that they made mistakes is because we glorify all the good parts,
Yes, we do.
Yay. Do you have anything else you want to talk about? Because I don't want to take up too much of your time. We're going on an hour.
I think an hour. You know, I think giving people space to feel how they feel is really important.
Yeah.
And it's not something that we consider often enough. Um, Pain is a very potent factor in people's lives, and it makes things complicated. It would be great if you and I and other people could sit down and have a very robust, comprehensive, straightforward conversation that would clarify everything. But most of the time, that's not how it works. I like to think of it as like stubbing your toe. Like, you know, if I stub my toe, the last thing I want in those 5 seconds after I stub my toe is for someone to explain myself to them. You know?
Yes.
Like, stub your toe, there's this immediate jolt of pain.
Yeah. The hole in the wall.
Fuck the world. I hate everything in this 5-second period. And so if someone were to come up to me and be like, hey, I saw you stub your toe. Could you explain to me why that hurts? I mean, to get the fuck away from me. I don't want to talk to you right now. Give me space. I think it's the same way with, you know, trauma that comes from bigotry. You know, there are people of color who go through pain, women who go through pain, LGBTQ folks, persons with disabilities, you know.
Oh my gosh, hold on. Wait.
Who go through that.
Wait a sec, stop.
Okay.
I got an unstable connection, and right when you're like laying down all this knowledge. Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Are you there? Okay, so so go back to the you know, like, you don't want a lot of people to explain how it felt for you to stub your toe.
Right. So the metaphor is like you stub your toe and you're in this enormous amount of pain for that very brief period. And there comes a misunderstanding from that.
Yeah.
So, you know, communities are not monoliths. A trans person is not going to react the same way to an instance of transphobia that I will. You know, or that another trans person will, or this trans person will.
Yeah.
You know, trans people are going to react differently to different acts of aggression or transphobia, or even things that weren't intended as transphobia, but could be perceived as transphobia. And sometimes I perceive something with a different degree than someone else does.
Yeah.
No community is a monolith. Not everything looks the same. And so I think it's important for allies to realize that you are always going to fuck up.
Yes. I mean,
precisely because the worldview of the people that you're being an ally to, or you're trying to be a good ally to, they're going to be wildly different.
Yep.
And so having the ability to take a step back and realize, you know what, this is not something that I've experienced, and it's entirely valid that this person is in pain and that they're lashing out, probably for good reason. I need to shut the hell up and just take a second to listen to them.
Yeah.
And that's so hard to internalize that and put it into practice, but it's critical. It is absolutely critical. Because let me tell you, the number of times that, I mean, you know, just in the last 2 years of the number of times where someone, you know, did something or they misgendered me and I had to take a step back and keep myself from getting really pissed off when they didn't intend harm at all. Like, they were not trying to be harmful. It's so interesting how often we talk past each other, but the responsibility for that does not fall on the person who's being oppressed. It falls on the person who is supposed to be an ally. You see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah. I always, you know, we talk about this a lot in just understanding that your words matter, you know, and making sure that how they land for other people is not painful.
Yeah, absolutely. Doesn't matter if you intended something, it's still impacted. So right. You got to take a step back and acknowledge how you know, what you said or did was hurtful.
Yeah.
And try to do better.
Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful for your time today.
Of I'm so grateful you invited me to do this.
Oh my God. No, it's so good. It's so good. And so we recorded it, and I'll send you a copy of it as well. And I'll have John kind of go through and make sure the sound is okay and everything. But you are, like I told you, you are a shining light. And every day, Charlotte, like I look so forward to like hearing what you have to say. And people out in the world, I know, just think you're, and you inspire so many people. So thank you for your time today.
Thank
and
you.
I'll be in communication. I'll stay in touch.
Yes, absolutely. And when I come to Boulder, we'll get dinner.
When you come to Boulder, you have a free place to stay.
Perfect. I love it.
Yeah, so you are welcome anytime.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you.
All right, Jennifer, thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye.